Welcome to the Psychedelic Spotlight podcast. I'm your host today, Jill Ettinger, Director of Content. Today, I catch up with Dr. Joseph Tucker, CEO of MagicMed Industries. Prior to joining MagicMed, Dr. Tucker was the founder and CEO of Stem Cell Therapeutics. Today, we talk about MagicMed's psychedelic library, which the company calls its Psybrary, as well as the company's plans to go public and what the future of psychedelic research looks like. This interview was recorded on March 17, 2021. Hi, Dr. Tucker. How are you?
Great, Jill. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for being here. I'm wondering if you could tell me a little bit about your background and how you came to MagicMed.
Sure. I'm a scientist by training. Came to the dark side business long time ago, and have been doing drug development for most of the last 20 years. So I've been a long time interest in neuroscience and also in when you can use really cool new technologies like synthetic biology and use that to create new drugs. So it's that interest and that background that ultimately led me into this very exciting space in psychedelics.
And what is it that MagicMed is working on? I know you developed something really interesting called the Psybrary. Could you talk about that?
Sure. Yeah. We think that this space is, there's a lot of cool stuff going on, so much with what I guess we call legacy or classic psychedelics, molecules that have been around for, either decades or thousands of years. But they do have some side effects. So the Psybrary is actually a recognition that if we want to get to the largest possible patient population, we could probably come up with some improved variations on these classic psychedelics. And so the Psybrary is a really large library, a psychedelics library, clever name, I know. But the idea is, to create this very large library of modified molecules, modified versions that we can, or I shouldn't say we, that big pharma and big biotech can pick through to try to find improved molecules.
And what does that mean, improved molecules? That means eliminating the side effects? Would that eliminate the hallucinogenic properties of a psychedelic, or how does that work?
Yeah, no, great question. And, I think it really strikes right to the core of maybe the biggest question in this entire sector right now. Is a hallucination required? You have definitely some strong scientists out there saying it's absolutely required. It's essential for the neuroplasticity. And, here's our clinical trial data to prove it. And you have other folks out there saying, no, take a look at microdosing. Take a look at what you can do with, these other molecules with ibogaine. It's totally not necessary. It's really cool. I think this is sort of the neatest part of this whole space. And we are agnostic about it. We're making all kinds of variations. Some will probably lose the hallucination effect and some will keep them. We're just making them all and saying, folks, let's test them. Whatever works best, let's go with that. So we don't care, whatever it is, as long as we're reducing some side effects. If it turns out hallucinations is a side effect, undoubtedly we will make a type that reduces that. If it turns out that the biggest side effect is, the vomiting that happens afterwards, well, I'm sure we'll have a variant that has less vomiting. So, whatever it is, we're just trying to make all new things, right? And let people test it and come up with the best molecules, whatever that is.
When you take away some of the side effects, the number one side effect people most often think about is the hallucinogenic experience. You also mentioned vomiting and feeling sick. What are some of the other side effects that could potentially be eliminated?
Well, those are obviously, those ones that you just said are the big ones, right? And gosh, if we can get rid of those and still get the benefit, I think that's 90% of what everybody would like, because you can really imagine being able to treat so many more patients if you could eliminate those two. If those turn out to be side effects that can be eliminated and still get the benefit. But there are other things like, everyone knows about the idea of set and setting, that you have to really control the environment and the mindset, the frame of mind of the patient. Everyone knows about that, but what that really boils down to from a drug perspective is what you would call a narrow therapeutic index, meaning, the difference between a dose giving you a benefit and a dose giving you a very negative side effect is so narrow, is so tight that you have to try to control other things. So if we could widen that, that window, that therapeutic index, for example, you might be able to, have much better outcomes for patients and not have to worry about controlling their environment so much, right? Other examples are how long does the drug that they take, how long does it take to enter the system? How long does it take to leave? How long are they, in the zone where it's having the effect? These are all things that you could potentially modify by modifying the molecule.
Are you looking to just license these out, or is this going to work into your own branded products down the road?
Well, we think that we're coming at this, we're bringing two really big technologies to bear on this. The synthetic biology creating the cyberry, which could potentially be millions of potential molecules. And we're bringing artificial intelligence in. There's something we call Psi AI to rapidly sort through those. And when you put those two together, what we think we're going to end up doing is creating far too many really promising, really exciting drug candidates to actually try to develop on our own. We think we'd have to raise billions of dollars and hire, so many people to try to move all of these forward in parallel. So our plan actually is to work with other companies and license them off really early and try to get as many of these out there being advanced by other companies as soon as possible. So it's totally a licensing model for us.
And are these products or the potential products something that would be taken like every day, like people are currently taking pharmaceuticals, or would this be similar to the way other psychedelics are being used, like, in a session with a therapist, or is it maybe a combination?
Yeah, well, the whole continuum is possible for sure. I think, for many people, the classic pharmaceutical approach, take 2 pills in the morning, manage yourself for the day, and otherwise live your life. That's something that patients are comfortable with, doctors are comfortable with, right? The pharmaceutical industry, everybody's understands and is comfortable with that paradigm. So if we can get there, that would be fantastic. But like I said at the beginning, what if it turns out that hallucinations are absolutely required? It's possible, right? Nobody really knows. Nobody knows. And if that's the case, then at least if we can take the edge off some side effects, and then it's still delivered, say, in a psychotherapy assisted setting, that's good too, right? I think it's all open to us. We're totally agnostic about it.
And what are some of the substances that you are working with?
Well, we started with this class that, it's called the tryptamines. So, not everybody knows what that means, but the tryptamine is basically this core structure that is the same structure that makes up psilocybin or psilocin found from magic mushrooms, or dimethyltryptamine found from ayahuasca, and a whole lot of related molecules. So we started there. And again, we're not using the individual molecule from nature. We think that belongs to nature, that belongs to society already. We're making modifications, completely new modifications. But that's where we started, in the tryptamine family. And now next up for us is going to be what we're calling the mescaline family, which are similar shapes, but a little bit different, also from nature, get similar outcomes in patients. And ayahuasca, of course, mescaline is from, well, we all know mescaline. We know where that comes from the cacti.
Interesting. How are you sourcing this? You're not growing a lot of the cactus on your own, or are you?
No. So again, because we're leaving nature to nature, right? We're leaving those molecules that are already out there in society. We think, we're such big fans of groups like MAPS and USONA, who are saying, like, let's leave these natural molecules, let's get them approved without some big bad company owning patents around these things. So no, we're totally synthetic. We're using the enzymes from nature, the enzymes that the original plants used to make it, or the original mushrooms, but then we're modifying that. So it's totally done in the lab. We have licenses from Health Canada to do this, but we don't actually need to grow the plants or the mushrooms to make any of these things.
And what are you treating, or what are you aiming to treat? I mean, psychedelics are being used for a range of different issues, from mental health issues to physical ones. Where are you looking, or is that just isolating these compounds through the library and the AI, and then leaving that to your partners, or are you looking specifically at treating different issues, or the potential to treat them?
Yeah, no, it's totally driven by the partners, right? The partners are coming to us, and we are getting requests like all over the map. Everything that you've heard about, that you've seen, and even stuff that's not out there. Because some of these companies are being quite creative. They're like, here's a place where we could use this. No one's really thought of it. Is there a molecule that we could make for that? So it's very broad, but it's not driven by us. It's driven by the partners and the particular indications that they want to pursue.
And that's predominantly in mental health space.
Yes. Yeah. Predominantly. You bet.
What other areas? I know I just read something, I think, about Parkinson's, and there are some other things. Have you heard, like, where else, what's the next kind of area that's going to be a hot topic? Or
yeah, that neurodegeneration, absolutely. We're already thinking about that. We're looking at that. You're right. There's things like TBI. There's things like Parkinson's. There's things like Alzheimer's. Basically anything to do. I mean, all of this brain stuff is connected in some way or other, and some of it is very connected. So yeah, more brain stuff, but less about personality or feelings, and getting more and more into neurodegeneration, right? Brain breaking down. Can you slow that down? Can you reverse it? Those are the kinds of really exciting questions that would be really, really amazing if we could take this whole class of molecules in that direction.
It's so interesting, because it's really easy to understand how a psychedelic experience can have a total shift in the way you view certain trauma in your life. And I've spoken with a lot of therapists, and they can attest to that people are able to work through trauma. But when it comes to these neurodegenerative disorders, do we know how or why these substances are showing potential? It's a completely different, it's not a conscious kind of understanding, which it seems like historically that's the way the psychedelics have worked, but that's not necessarily the case, as you say, right?
Right. Going back to the sort of the question, how we kind of kicked this whole conversation off on having to do with the change in perception, right? The hallucination, how integral is that really, and is that the mechanism? Because here's the coolest thing, craziest thing in my mind is, despite all these really smart people working on it, we don't know the mechanism. On the mental health side, we don't know the mechanism. There's a lot of talk about, the hallucination. It's associated with 5-HT2A, this specific receptor, and that must be the mechanism. But, 5-HT receptors, 5-HT is serotonin, and there's 14 serotonin receptors. And the serotonin pathway and many of these other receptors are the targets of all the other drugs that are out there to treat depression and anxiety. Like, we're right in the thick of, a very interesting series. And the dopamine receptors too are also targets. You know what else dopamine is in? Parkinson's disease, right? So there's the crossover right here that we're in. Is it perception, or is it these other receptors? Are we inadvertently hitting the other receptors and making, these awesome things happen? We think it's the hallucination, but maybe it's actually because we're hitting a dopamine receptor or one of the other 5-HT receptors. So the whole thing, you said the mechanism is not known. The mechanism is not known for any of this, but we know we're in a target-rich zone. Let's say that. We know we're in a target-rich zone, so it's a great place to be. A great area for science. Maybe we can find a bunch of great drugs for a lot of things we're not even on our radar screen right now. That would be cool.
It's so fascinating. I wanted to talk a little bit about the company. I know you've recently raised some funding and you are gearing up to go public in the Canadian Stock Exchange. You want to talk about that? I think your ticker will be MGIC.
That's right. Yeah, we have reserved the ticker MGIC. Of course, yeah. Can I promise we're going to go public? No, you never can. The lawyers would slap me down. But we have filed our prospectus with the Canadian Stock Exchange. As you said, we have reserved MGIC. I'm feeling pretty confident that we will get there before too long. So we're really excited about that. And then, of course, the next thing after that will be to then list on the OTC. And yeah, as we go public, we've been very successful raising capital so far. The last round we did was, so heavily oversubscribed that we ended up taking about 3 times more than we were looking for, but it's because we were 20 times oversubscribed. So certainly whatever it is we're doing or saying seems to be resonating with people. And I hope that it continues like that. It feels like it will.
It certainly feels that way. Where do you see this industry? There's so much going on, so much in the research, the treatment side. What do you see happening over the next 12 to 24 months?
Well, I think that the psychedelic space, a lot of people connect it to cannabis or try to frame it in the cannabis space. It's a scheduled drug now becoming decriminalized or legalized, and it's going to be a giant market, and there's some health stuff related to that too, and that's kind of like how people bundle it together. I think that it's quite different, right? I think that psychedelics is far more about treating mental health and far less likely to be this giant recreational market. So as a result, I think we're going to see a bifurcation. I think we're going to see the natural molecules become, it seems like, more and more become decriminalized and then allowed for use in an in-clinic, therapist setting. And then I think we're going to see the on the other side of it, the companies like ours saying, hold on, this is a really exciting area for medicine. We can maybe make a lot of new drugs that might be far better than the classic psychedelics. And so you're going to see a bunch of hardcore scientists, drug developers say, let's go make new drugs and make the world a better place. And that's how I kind of see it. And, there's, in that bifurcation, there's probably going to be a gap in between that I think more than a few companies will fall in. Maybe a chasm is the right word.
Yeah. And Canada, I think there's like murmurings of decriminalization efforts underway.
Yeah. Things are already underway, and we've seen it in the States as well, right? So, and to speculate on that, I'm no politician, nor am I, a lawyer. So I wouldn't be able to speculate really, but yeah, we certainly see the signs, and there's certainly the path was trodden, if you will, or broken by cannabis before. So there's certain things that people say, this is a path that was used for medical marijuana. Let's see if we can try to go down that path a bit. And we're seeing stuff like that starting to happen in Canada for sure.
Yeah, it seems to be that it's a lot easier. I mean, our nation's capital, the decriminalization just went into effect, I think, yesterday. So, and we've had other cities that have done it already, but now you hear more of states, California, Hawaii, Florida, are looking to pass some decriminalization. So it seems like it's exponential growth versus where cannabis was such a long conversation, and they're still not there yet. But it seems like, I think psychedelics is just showing so much more promise. Perhaps maybe that's it. I'm not sure, but it's very interesting.
Yeah, I think medically, yes, right? Medically, the psychedelics show a lot more promise. I think, and again, the reason I kind of see a bifurcation, if you will, is that they're also more impactful, right? You don't really imagine somebody smoking a joint, them kind of completely losing control of what they're up to. Whereas you could totally see that with psychedelics and, in certain settings. So I think that there's going to be, more control, even as things become decriminalized. I think there will be more vestiges of control in how the molecules or how these drugs are allowed to be consumed, just because they do have more of an impact. I think, not necessarily that they're toxic. I think probably everybody would say alcohol is more toxic than most of these things, but it just has more to do with, is the person at risk or at danger of being, a danger to themselves or others. That would be my guess anyway. They'll be a little tighter than it was with cannabis.
But certainly rightfully so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. And for our listeners, you can find more information over at MagicMedIndustries.com.
That's right. Yes. Thanks, Jill.
Thank you, Dr. Tucker.
I appreciate it.
Global Track Solutions, Inc. and Psychedelic Spotlight does not in any way encourage or condone the use, purchase, sale, or transfer of any illegal substances, nor do we encourage or condone partaking in any unlawful activities. We support a harm reduction approach for the purpose of education and promoting individual and public safety. If you are choosing to use psychedelic substances, please do so responsibly. The views and opinions expressed by the guests on the Psychedelic Spotlight podcast are those of their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Psychedelic Spotlight and Global Track Solutions, Inc.